You ever have a moment where time just stops? Where every sound in the room feels louder, every glance feels heavier, and you know, deep in your gut, you're standing on the edge of something you shouldn't touch? That's where I was, sitting on my best friend's couch, the summer heat sticking to my skin, when his mom leaned in close and whispered, "Don't worry, he won't be home for hours." My heart didn't just skip, it crashed. I was 19, barely figuring out life, and there she was, 42, with eyes that held secrets I wasn't ready to unravel. What do you do when someone you've known forever suddenly feels like a stranger? Not just any stranger, a stranger who makes your pulse race in ways you can't explain. I should have left right then, but I didn't. And that's where this story starts, a choice I made in a single, reckless moment that changed everything. Have you ever been caught in a situation you knew was wrong but couldn't walk away from? That's what this is about, the kind of forbidden pull that makes you question who you are. I'm not proud of what happened next, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Because this isn't just a story, it's a confession. It's about the lines we cross when no one's watching, the guilt that follows, and the moments that haunt you long after the door closes. Stay with me, because this isn't what you think it is. It's messier, rawer, and way more complicated than a simple scandal. By the end, you might judge me, or you might understand me. Either way, you'll feel something. Ready to hear what happened when I stayed on that couch? Let's go back to that summer, to that house, to the moment everything shifted. It was the summer after my freshman year of college, 2016, in a small suburban town outside Chicago. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where the streets are lined with identical houses and the biggest drama is who didn't mow their lawn. I'd come home to crash at my parents' place, but most of my days were spent at my best friend Jake's house. Jake and I had been tight since middle school, same soccer team, same bad taste in music, same stupid inside jokes that made us laugh until we couldn't breathe. His house was my second home, a refuge from my parents' constant questions about my grades or my future. Jake's mom, Lisa, was always around, the kind of mom who'd make you sandwiches without asking, who'd laugh at your dumb stories and make you feel like you belong. She was cool, you know? Not in a trying too hard way, but in that effortless, warm way that made you forget she was someone's mom. She was 42, fit from yoga classes. With dark hair she always wore loose and a smile that felt like it saw right through you. Her eyes had this way of locking onto you, like she was reading your thoughts, and it always left me a little unsteady, though I never admitted it. Lisa was a single mom. Jake's dad had split when he was a kid, leaving her to raise him alone. She had this quiet strength, like she'd been through hell but still found a way to laugh. I'd always liked her, but not like that. At least, not at first. I was 19, awkward, still figuring out how to talk to girls my own age, let alone someone like her. I was all gangly limbs and bad haircuts, barely able to hold a conversation without tripping over my words. But that summer, something shifted. Maybe it was the way she'd linger when we talked, her eyes holding mine a second too long. Or the way she'd brush past me in the kitchen, her hand grazing my arm just enough to make me notice. It was subtle, but it was there, like a current running under the surface of every interaction. And it was messing with my head, making me question things I'd never questioned before. I started noticing details about her I hadn't before, the way her laugh sounded a little different when it was just us, the way her fingers curled around her coffee mug, the way she'd tilt her head when she asked me something personal. It was like I was seeing her for the first time, and I didn't know what to do with that. That day, Jake had a shift at the local hardware store. He'd been working overtime to save for a car, so I was at his place alone, waiting for him to get back. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional chirp of cicadas outside. Lisa was home, moving around the house, humming some old song I didn't recognize, maybe Fleetwood Mac or something from her generation. The air felt heavy, like the heat was pressing down on us, making everything slower, thicker. I was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from the weird tension I felt whenever she was around. Then she came into the living room with 2 glasses of iced tea, condensation dripping down the sides. "You look like you're melting," she said, handing me one. Her voice was light, teasing, but there was something else in it, something that made me sit up a little straighter. She sat down next to me, closer than usual, her knee brushing mine. I didn't move. I should have, but I didn't. The couch felt too small all of a sudden, like there wasn't enough space for both of us, and the thoughts racing through my head. We started talking, nothing deep, just small talk about college, my plans, her job at the library. She asked about my classes, and I rambled about some boring econ course I was taking, trying to sound more interesting than I felt. But the conversation kept circling back to personal stuff. She asked if I had a girlfriend, and when I said no, she smiled in this way that made my stomach flip. "You're too sweet to be single," she said, and I laughed it off, but my face was burning. I could feel her eyes on me, and I didn't dare look back, because I knew if I did, I'd see something I wasn't ready for. Then she leaned in, her voice dropping low, almost a whisper, and said those words. "Don't worry, he won't be home for hours." It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it, like she was testing the water, seeing if I'd jump in. My mouth went dry. I knew what she meant, or at least I thought I did. And the worst part? I wanted to find out. I wanted to know what was behind that look, that tone, that moment. But I was terrified, terrified of what it meant, terrified of what I might do if I stayed. I froze. My phone was still in my hand, but I wasn't looking at it anymore. Lisa's eyes were locked on mine, and the room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. "What do you mean?" I managed to say, my voice cracking like I was 15 again. She laughed, soft and low, and leaned back, sipping her iced tea like she hadn't just dropped a bomb. "Relax," she said. "I just mean we've got the place to ourselves. No need to be so tense." But her smile said something else, something that made my heart pound harder. It wasn't just playful, it was deliberate, like she knew exactly what she was doing to me. I should have changed the subject. I should have gotten up, made an excuse, left. But I stayed. And that's when things started spiraling. She shifted closer, her bare foot brushing against my leg under the coffee table. It was accidental, or maybe it wasn't. My brain was screaming at me to move, to say something normal, but my body wasn't listening. "You're different this summer," she said, her voice softer now, almost like she was talking to herself. "More grown up." I didn't know what to say to that. I mumbled something stupid about college changing people, but she wasn't really listening. She was looking at me in a way that made me feel exposed, like she could see every thought I was trying to hide. The next hour was a blur of tension. We kept talking, but every word felt loaded, like we were dancing around something neither of us wanted to name. She'd laugh at something I said, her hand resting on my arm a little too long, her fingers lingering like they didn't want to let go. She'd ask questions that felt too personal, about my dreams, my fears, things I hadn't even told Jake. And I answered because part of me wanted to keep her attention, wanted to see where this was going, even though I knew it was dangerous. The forbidden part wasn't just that she was Jake's mom, it was that she was someone I trusted, someone who was supposed to be off limits. But the way she looked at me, the way she seemed to see me, made it hard to care about the rules. It was like she was pulling me into her orbit, and I didn't have the strength to pull away. Then she stood up, saying she needed to grab something from the kitchen. "Come help me," she said, and it wasn't a question. I followed her, my legs moving like they had a mind of their own. In the kitchen, she reached for a jar on a high shelf, and when she couldn't get it, she turned to me, her body close enough that I could smell her perfume, something warm, like vanilla and cedar, that made my head spin. "Can you get it?" she asked, but she didn't move out of the way. I reached up, my arm brushing hers, and for a second we were frozen like that, inches apart, the air between us electric. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. She didn't step back. Neither did I. It was like we were both waiting for the other to make a move, to break the spell or push it further. I grabbed the jar, handed it to her, and our fingers touched again, longer this time, deliberate. Her eyes met mine, and I saw something there, something hungry, something scared, something that mirrored exactly what I was feeling. That's when the guilt hit, like a punch to the chest. This was Jake's mom. Jake, who'd been there for me through every breakup, every fight with my parents, every stupid mistake I'd made. Jake, who trusted me like a brother, who'd shared his home, his family, his life with me. If he walked in right now, what would he think? What would he do? The thought made me feel sick, like I was betraying him in the worst way possible. I stepped back, muttering something about needing to check my phone, and she just smiled, like she knew exactly what was going through my head. "You're a good kid," she said, but the way she said kid felt like a challenge, like she was daring me to prove I wasn't one. It stung, because I didn't feel like a kid when I was with her. I felt like someone else entirely, someone reckless, someone alive, someone who wanted things he shouldn't. The rest of the afternoon was torture. I stayed because I didn't trust myself to leave without saying something I'd regret. We went back to the couch, kept talking, but the vibe had changed. Every glance, every laugh, every accidental touch felt like it was pushing us closer to a line we couldn't cross. And the worst part? I wanted to cross it. I wanted to know what would happen if I leaned in, if I closed the distance between us. I kept imagining it, her lips on mine, the heat of her skin, the way it would feel to give in completely. But I kept thinking about Jake, about the betrayal it would be, about the kind of person I'd become if I let this go any further. I was torn, stuck between wanting her and hating myself for it. Every time she smiled, every time her hand brushed mine, it was like a test I was failing. Then she said something that stopped me cold. "You know, sometimes you have to take what you want, even if it's messy." She wasn't looking at me when she said it. She was staring at her glass, swirling the ice like it held all the answers. But I knew what she meant. And I knew she was talking about us. My mouth went dry again, and I felt this mix of panic and longing so strong it made me dizzy. I was 19, and I was in over my head. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the tension, but the words wouldn't come. I just sat there, my heart hammering, my mind racing with all the reasons this was wrong and all the reasons I didn't care. I didn't leave, though. Not yet. I told myself I'd go soon, that I'd get up and walk out before anything happened, but deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. I wanted to stay. I wanted to see how far this could go. The next few weeks were a slow descent into chaos. I kept going back to Jake's house, telling myself it was just to hang out with him, but that was a lie. Jake was working longer hours, picking up extra shifts to save for that car, and that meant I was alone with Lisa more often than I wanted to admit. Every time I showed up, she'd find a reason to be around, making coffee, asking for help with some random chore, or just sitting with me, talking about things that felt too intimate for a casual chat. It was like we were playing a game, circling each other, never saying what we were really thinking but getting closer every time. The air between us was charged, heavy with things unsaid, and every interaction felt like it was pushing us towards something inevitable. I'd catch her looking at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, and I'd pretend not to notice, but my heart would race every time. I was addicted to the feeling, to the way she made me feel seen, wanted, alive in a way I'd never been before. One day, she asked me to help fix a shelf in her bedroom. Jake was at work, and the house was quiet except for the hum of the AC. I should have said no, should have made an excuse, but I didn't. I followed her upstairs, my stomach twisting with a mix of nerves and excitement. Upstairs, the air felt heavier, like the walls were holding their breath. She handed me a screwdriver, her fingers brushing mine, and I swear it felt like a spark, like something physical passed between us. We worked on the shelf, but the whole time, I was hyper-aware of her, her breathing, her movements, the way her hair fell over her shoulder. She was close, too close, and I could smell that vanilla cedar perfume again, clouding my thoughts. When we finished, she sat on the edge of her bed, patting the spot next to her. "Sit," she said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I did, because I was weak, because I wanted to be close to her, even though I knew it was wrong. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. We talked for hours that day, about her life, her divorce, the loneliness she never showed anyone. She told me things I'm sure Jake didn't even know, like how she'd cried herself to sleep for months after his dad left, how she'd given up on dating because it felt like betraying her son. Her voice was raw, vulnerable, and it broke something in me. I wanted to fix it, to take away her pain, but I didn't know how. I told her things too, about my insecurities, my fear of never being enough, stuff I'd never said out loud before. It was like we were peeling back layers, showing each other the parts we kept hidden from the world. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was something deeper, something that scared me because it felt real. But it couldn't be real. It was impossible. She was Jake's mom, and I was just a kid to her, no matter how grown up she made me feel. The tension kept building, day after day, week after week. There were moments, too many to count, where we'd get too close, where our hands would touch, where our eyes would lock and neither of us would look away. I'd catch myself staring at her when she wasn't looking, memorizing the curve of her jaw, the way her lips moved when she talked. I'd lie awake at night, replaying our conversations, wondering what it would be like to give in, to let go of the guilt, and just feel. One night, Jake was out with friends, and Lisa invited me over for dinner. Just the two of us. She cooked pasta, poured wine even though I was underage, and we sat at the kitchen table like it was a date. She wore this dress, nothing fancy, but it hugged her in a way that made it hard to focus. We laughed, we talked, and it felt so normal, so right, but so wrong at the same time. Then, out of nowhere, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I like this," she said, her voice soft but sure. "I like you?" My heart stopped. I wanted to say it back, to tell her I felt the same, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I just squeezed her hand, and that was enough. For now. The guilt was eating me alive. Every time I saw Jake, I felt like a traitor. He'd talk about his mom like she was a saint, telling me how she'd always been there for him, how she deserved better than the life she'd had. And I'd nod along, pretending I wasn't falling for her, pretending I wasn't lying to his face. I started avoiding him, making excuses not to hang out, but I couldn't stay away from Lisa. It was like an addiction. I'd tell myself I'd stop, that I'd cut it off, that I'd be the friend Jake deserved, but then she'd text me, something simple, like, "Come over, I need your help with something." And I'd be there in 10 minutes, my heart racing, my mind screaming at me to turn back. I was losing control, and I knew it, but I didn't know how to stop. The breaking point came one evening when Jake was out of town for a weekend. Lisa called me, her voice shaky, saying she needed to talk. When I got there, she was a mess, tears in her eyes, hands trembling, her usual confidence gone. She said she'd had a fight with her sister, that she felt alone, that I was the only one who got her. I didn't know what to say, so I just held her while she cried, my arms around her, her head on my shoulder. It felt so natural, so right, but so wrong at the same time. We were on her couch, the same one where this all started, and then she looked up at me, her face inches from mine, her eyes red but still beautiful. "I shouldn't want this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But I do." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My heart was pounding, my mind a mess of want and fear and guilt. And then I kissed her. It was like the world exploded and collapsed at the same time. Everything I'd been holding back, the longing, the guilt, the fear, came rushing out in that one moment. Her lips were soft, warm, and for a second, nothing else mattered. Not Jake, not the consequences, not the fact that this was wrong on every level. It was just us, and it felt like the only thing that was real. We pulled away, both of us breathing hard, and she looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Her eyes were wide, scared, but there was something else there too, something that told me she wanted this as much as I did. "We can't tell anyone," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And I nodded because I knew she was right, but I also knew I didn't care. I was too far gone. That kiss changed everything, and nothing. We tried to act normal, like nothing had happened, but the secret hung between us like a shadow, dark and heavy. Jake came back from his trip, oblivious, talking about his weekend like everything was fine. I played along, laughing at his stories, pretending I wasn't carrying this weight in my chest. But every time I saw Lisa, it was like a knife twisting deeper. We stole moments when we could, brief touches when Jake wasn't looking, whispered words when we were alone, glances that said everything we couldn't. But it was never enough. The guilt grew heavier, and so did the fear of getting caught. I started noticing things, Jake looking at me funny, like he sensed something was off, or the way Lisa's voice would change when he walked into the room. One day, he asked me, "You okay, man? You've been weird lately." I lied, said I was just stressed about school, but I could tell he wasn't fully buying it. I wondered if he knew, if he'd seen something, heard something. The paranoia was eating me up, but I couldn't stop. Then Lisa ended it. It was a random afternoon, Jake was at work, and she asked me to come over. I thought it was another stolen moment, but when I got there, she was different, distant, her eyes avoiding mine. She sat me down on the couch, the same damn couch, and said we had to stop. "This isn't fair to Jake," she said, tears in her eyes, her voice cracking. "Or to us." I wanted to argue, to tell her I didn't care, that I'd rather have her and lose everything else, but deep down, I knew she was right. We were living on borrowed time, and the fallout would have destroyed everything: Jake, her, me, the life we all knew. So we stopped. No more late-night talks, no more stolen glances, no more moments that made my heart race. I started avoiding their house, making excuses not to see Jake, because seeing her was too hard. When I did run into her, we acted like strangers, like nothing had ever happened. It hurt, like losing a part of myself, but it was the only way to keep things from falling apart. Here's the twist: years later, I was back in town for a friend's wedding, and Jake invited me over. We were catching up, drinking beers in his backyard, when he mentioned his mom. He said she'd met someone, a guy her age, someone stable, someone who made her laugh. She seemed happy, he said, happier than he'd seen her in years. I smiled, nodded, told him that was great, but inside, I was reeling. I couldn't help wondering if she ever thought about me, about that summer, about the kiss that changed everything. I never told Jake the truth. I don't know if that makes me a coward or just human. Maybe both. I think about it sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep. What would have happened if we'd kept going, if we'd thrown caution to the wind and let ourselves fall? Would it have been worth it? Or would it have destroyed us all? I don't have answers, and maybe I never will. What would you have done? Would you have risked it all for a moment that felt like everything, or would you have walked away before it went too far? Hit that like button if this story hit you hard, if it made you feel the weight of those choices. Subscribe for more raw, real confessions like this, stories that dig into the messy, complicated parts of being human. Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to know what you think. Have you ever had a secret you couldn't tell, something that burned inside you but you had to keep locked away? Drop it below, anonymously if you want. You're not alone. And if this story made you feel something, share it with someone who gets it. Let's keep these conversations going, because sometimes, the hardest stories are the ones we need to hear most. 9.